Good morning, YouTube. Welcome once again to the Blankest Blankophobe YouTube channel. And today we're going to be doing the first of many, I hope, tabletop reviews for gear that I particularly like. Now, in my channel description down below, you may have noticed that I said I would be doing reviews on guns, gear, optics, things of that nature for not only my fellow preppers and tactical shooters, but basically anybody out there who likes a good optic, likes a good gun, likes good gear. And as I said, this will be the first of many, and I hope you enjoy it. Now, this optic I'm going to review today, it's quickly becoming one of my personal favorites. I've tried a lot of optics over the years, many budget optics, one or two higher end ones. I'm not the richest person in the world. But as far as budget optics go, this is probably the best one I have ever seen, and I will probably be mounting one of these on all of my ARs in the near future. And that, of course, being the Holosun 403C. Get you a better good look at it there. There we go. Now, Holosun is not a very new company. It's been around for quite a few years, but they've only gotten into optics, I think, in the last 4, maybe 5 years or so. But in the time that they've gotten into it, they've made tremendous strides in the way at least I personally view a budget red dot optic. Now, anybody who shoots an AR-15 or any kind of tactical high-end gun knows that a red dot is very handy. I know guys who can shoot iron sights a lot better than I can, better than some people can shoot with a red dot. But rule of thumb is, if you have a red dot, you're going to have faster target acquisition, a little bit more accurate, and that's arguable. But basically, it makes the gun easier to shoot. And with something like this, it makes it a lot easier. Now, this is a lot similar to something like an Aimpoint T1. Some people call it the poor man's Aimpoint. But as far as features go, this is an amazing optic. For one thing, the battery that it runs off of, being a 2032 button battery or watch battery, goes into its little tray right down here at the bottom of the optic. I don't know if you can see it. There we go. Right there. Now, that would probably be my one hang-up with this optic, because in order to get this tray out, it has very small screws. You kind of need a tiny little screwdriver, and if you're changing batteries in the field, it can be a little tricky without practice. But not a huge thing wrong with it, or not a huge detriment to the overall sight, but it's just one of my personal pet peeves. I don't really like that tray. Now, the mount that this comes on, this is the high-rise mount, and it comes with two. The high-rise mount is meant for something like an AR-15 where you need a higher sight radius, but the lower mount allows it to be mounted on, let's say, a shotgun, an AK, a handgun if you're so inclined, but it makes it a very versatile optic. Now, one of my favorite things about this optic is not only does it run off of the 2032 button battery, and by the way, this thing gets 50,000 hours of battery life on the medium setting off of one 2032 battery. That is amazing. Those are Aimpoint numbers. Aimpoint being the factory standard for anyone not familiar with red dot sights. But what makes this even more versatile is not only does it have such a long battery life, much longer than any other budget optic I've ever seen, but it also has a solar panel on top. Make sure you can see that. Right there. And the solar panel actually allows this optic to work without the battery even installed. When I first got this, I took this out of the box, then I'd seen a lot of reviews saying, oh, it works right out of the box before the battery's even in. I was skeptical on that. I wasn't really sure. But pulled the optic out, put it up to my eye, and sure enough, there was a red dot in there. I had not even unpacked the battery yet. And in fact, let me see if I can let you see the dot. There it is. And as you can see, it's a very crisp dot. Some people say crisper than an Aimpoint. I wouldn't know. I've never used an Aimpoint personally. But the funny thing is, right now, the optic is not even technically powered on. The battery has not been engaged. And another great thing which brings me to my next point, the solar panel up here, not only does it allow the optic to work off of ambient light, but it also automatically adjusts itself. Right now I'm sitting right underneath my dining room light, so I've got a lot of ambient light to work with. Hang on a second, let me get that back there. So I have a lot of ambient light to work with. Let me get that dot back in there for you. But the great thing is, if I were to go into a darker area where this solar panel is covered, see that? It automatically adjusts itself to ambient light. Now if I were to go into another brighter area, dot and perks back up. And again, the battery's not even engaged on this yet. And the way you engage the battery, right now it's on pretty much off mode, but if I wanted to engage the battery, I would just push down the increase magnification or plus button for about 3 seconds, and that turns the battery on. And I've got it at a low setting right now. Usually when I go into battery mode, it's because it's completely dark and the dot becomes almost unseeable, especially if you're using a weapon light. And so I like to reserve my battery for those situations. But if you're in broad daylight or in a bright room, then the solar panel is more than enough. Now this optic has a 2 MOA dot, can't talk today. And I think the 2 MOA dot is pretty much the perfect size. A lot of people like the 4 MOA or the 1 MOA. 4 MOA is good, it's a great CQB dot, but it's not very good at long distance. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, a 2 MOA dot means at 100 yards, that little dot is going to cover roughly a 2-inch circle, again at 100 yards. So, if you're shooting at a guy from 20 feet away, or any target rather, from 20 feet away, the dot is going to pretty much cover about the space of my fingertip. Now, if you're shooting at 100 yards away, it becomes a little more difficult when you're not using your iron sights or a magnified optic. At 100 yards away, that tiny little dot is going to cover a circle roughly this size, if you're shooting dead center on the chest. And in my opinion, like I said, the 2 MOA is about the perfect size dot for any kind of optic, because it gives you that versatility. You can still shoot at 100 yards, 200 yards. I've taken this out to 200 yards before. In fact, the other day I went down to the range and I threw this magnifier on here. This is a UTG 3X magnifier. If you'd like, I can do a separate review on this. Please leave a comment below if you'd like to see that. And when I throw this magnifier up behind that red dot, it becomes even more crisp, even more clear, and it's pretty much like looking through a rifle scope. That's why I love magnifiers paired with red dots. It gives you a lot more versatility when it comes to your prepping or tactical firearm. You have your zero magnification red dot, which is basically naked eye. You're just looking through and seeing the dot. And you can use that for room clearing, medium range, out to 100, 200 meters, perfectly well. And all you have to do is throw the gun up, and you see that crisp little dot up there, and wherever you have that dot, once you have your gun zeroed, wherever you put that dot is where your bullet is going to go, pretty much. And if you add a magnifier, all you have to do is flick your wrist, and now you can go out to 3, 4, even 500 meters if you'd like. As far as you can ably shoot this with a 3X magnifier or even with your naked eye is as far as you can go. It gives you a lot of versatility, a lot of choices when it comes to your philosophy of use for your firearm. Now, moving on from the power aspect, this is also a very tough optic. I've seen reviews where people dropped these. I saw one where a guy just picked it up and threw it against a tree. I didn't get quite that violent because, as I said, I'm not a rich man. I can't really afford to buy a bunch of these if I break them. But I've beaten this thing up. I've taken it out in the woods. I have dropped the gun on top of it. It has hit rocks. It has hit trees. I've had it bumping around inside the vehicle. And it has held zero. It has performed perfectly. I cannot mess this thing up. And I mentioned zeroing earlier. A lot of budget red dots, they're not really hard to zero, but it's just a pain in the ass to try to do it. You have to get your screwdriver out and adjust those fine increments when it comes to the windage and elevation adjustments. This makes it a little easier because you may have noticed the caps that are on the windage and adjustment dials. If you screw those caps off, I got fat fingers, so it takes me a minute. I don't know if you can see this or not, but on the inside of these caps, there are actually little arrows, and it tells you which way to turn it, up or down, and to get left or right, up or down. And it actually has a little screw head on the back of that, which fits into the dial. So basically you can adjust this on the fly with no tools at all, provided you don't drop these tiny little dials like I've done before. And when you do adjust them, I don't know if you can hear this or not, but come on, damn it. There. I don't know if you can hear this or not, but when you do crank up or down the adjustments, it's a very audible, very tactile click. You can both hear and feel it, so you get positive adjustment. Don't want to adjust it too much, I don't want to lose my zero. And when you're done with it, you just screw it right back on. And not only is it a safety cover for your dial, for your windage dials, but it's a handy little tool to have. So basically you can take this in the field, you can just grab it off your rack, ready to go, no tools, and you can adjust it on the fly whenever you need to. And I don't know what else I can say. It's just a really, really good budget optic. Now, of course, there are better optics out there. If you have the money to spend on an EOTech or an Aimpoint T1 or a Trijicon ACOG, by all means go for it. I have an EOTech. It's a great optic. I love it. It's perfect for CQB. It's got my favorite reticle, which is a circle dot reticle. This just has a simple dot, by the way. Holosun also makes a 503C, which gives you the option of having the simple dot or a circle dot with a 65 MOA ring around the simple dot. And of course, they have an entire line of other optics that I could go into on a completely separate video. They have magnified optics, they have prism optics, they have ACOG-esque kind of optics. They even make a holographic optic very similar to an ACOG, or not an ACOG, but an EOTech rather. And from what I've heard, it has a much crisper reticle than an EOTech. That's my biggest hang-up with my EOTech, because the holographic optic, or holographic reticle rather, is just so fuzzy. It's great for CQB. All you have to do is throw it up and see the ring and fire. It's okay. For me, it's okay at distance. My eyes aren't the best, as you can probably tell, and I just don't like that washout when you move the optic side to side, and the reticle just keeps washing out across your screen. And that's another point that I can bring up for the EOTech 403. It has a great field of view, and you may have noticed that the aperture is a little small, which is everybody's biggest hang-up with optics like this. These are called microdots, by the way. Is that you don't have a very good field of view. But in my experience, if I throw this up and I'm just looking through it, both eyes open, it's not really an issue, because I can see the dot plain as day. It's right there. I can put it on target, squeeze off my shot, and feel very confident with it. Now, if you're one of these guys that likes to close one eye, it can be a little bit of an issue, but the field of view is actually still pretty good. I'm not sure exactly what kind of footage it is, and exactly what kind of area I can see at what distance, but in my opinion, it's very good. And in closing, I'll bring up my biggest point for why I love this optic so much, and this company, and this company as a whole. And the Holosun company is awesome. I called them up. I had some or I didn't call them. I sent a message to them. I had some questions for them. Usually, when I put in a Q&A to any company on the internet, I have to wait about a week to get an answer. Holosun got back to me in less than 4 hours. They were amazing. And their customer service is awesome. I've talked to other people who have owned Holosuns and also love them. Pretty much everybody you talk to either loves or hates these optics. It's kind of one of those things. But their customer service is awesome. If you were to break this optic, then they will send you one out right away, no questions asked. It's lifetime warranty. And if you want an upgrade, they'll help you out with that. I don't know, they won't do a straight trade-off, of course, but if, say I wanted to move up from this to one of their prism optics, they would help me out with that. They'd help me explore my options, give me some pricing, some price points, things of that nature. I could even return this site if I wanted to. But amazing company, great company. And I keep saying that it's a budget optic. And you may think, well, Blankist, with all these features on here, how can it be a budget optic? I mean, I have other optics out here that are pretty budget oriented, like this UTG I have in my M&P. This cost me about $65. The Holosun 403C, I paid $150 for it off of Amazon. The 503C, which will probably be my next purchase from Holosun, is a little bit more, about $180, $190 if you go from Holosun itself. On Amazon, you might get a little cheaper. So yeah, $150 for a site that many people say is almost on par with an Aimpoint. Don't quote me on that, because I've heard different things from different people. And some people even call these Aimpoint killers, because this has almost all of the features of an Aimpoint, and it's actually very similar to in appearance to an Aimpoint. And in fact, if you have an Aimpoint T1 or T2, or any of the mounts associated with that, you can actually use those mounts on the Holosun. If you don't like this high-rise mount, you can take this off, and you can put this optic on, say, a Aimpoint mount, a LaRue tactical mount, pretty much any kind of high-end microdot mount that can fit an Aimpoint T1 can fit this optic. Same thing with a 503C. So, yeah, $150. All these features, awesome optic. And if you're looking for a better mid-range optic, if you just got into tactical shooting or prepping or even competition shooting, and you want something that won't break the bank but will still deliver, Holosun is the way to go. I highly recommend it. In closing, this is Blankist Blankophobe, reminding everybody out there to stay sharp, take care, and have fun at the range.